Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Bestop HOSS Jeep Hardtop Hoist for your garage. And this is going to make it really nice to be able to take the top off of your Jeep and have a place to store it. And when you get it back on, you don't even need an extra set of hands to be able to do it. Now we're here with Stacy, and we just installed the HOSS hoist system in their garage. And now they can start using the Jeep without the top. So tell me a little bit about your Jeep and how long you've owned it.
This is my third summer having my Jeep. I always just take the front top off and my side doors. I've never had the Jeep totally everything off because I can never do that by myself. So I'm very, very excited that now I can enjoy the sunshine, everything off the Jeep and ride without any problems, and I can take care of it all by myself.
So if you didn't have the hoist, where would you store this when it would be off?
Oh my goodness, that would probably create another problem if I didn't have the hoist. So now I can just hoist it up and I don't have to worry about a storage place or having space, because that was another initial problem. I didn't know where we could put the top after it came off.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your work. Appreciate it.
Jeeps are kind of a unique vehicle in the fact that they are off-road machines that are highly customizable, and you can really drive around with no doors on, which any other car people would look at you a little bit differently. And the great part about Jeeps too is be able to take the tops off, and a lot of my friends have had soft tops. You could roll them back, no problem. And then I asked my friends with the hard tops, well, have you ever taken it off? And they said, I don't have a place to store it, and it's hard to do by myself. Well, this is a solution to fix both of those things. That is a large hardtop, and it's fiberglass, so it's not super heavy, but one person to carry that and move it around is kind of a pain to do. And really finding a spot in your garage to put it, it's practically half the size of a car. So if you can move it up and out of the way, and also have it available to lower it back on when those colder months come around, it's a really great option. It's going to not only gain you space, but also just ease of being able to go fully topless in your Jeep. What I really like is how easy it is to operate. You just simply trim the key to the on position, raise and lower as necessary. And the great part, as it's suspended, is one person can kind of move it around as it lowers down, being able to get this on the Jeep for when you do need to reinstall it. Another great feature is the key that's on this panel. If you don't want your kids raising and lowering the hardtop of your Jeep, you can simply lock it, pull that key out, and it's not going to move. Now at this point, when you're ready to reinstall the top, it's going to be pretty easy to just simply take the wing nuts off of our bracket here, and that's actually the factory mounting point for the hole to tighten this all down. So it just unloosens. You can lift this up, pop it out, and then put your hard top on, bolt it down, and you're back to having your top on. And then when those warmer months come around and you're ready to take the hard top off, you're simply just going to put those brackets back in place once you take your hardware off, and then you can attach those, put it back up, and it's going to be stored safely. Now the winch does move pretty quick, but the great thing is you don't have to worry about raising it up too high and causing damage or burning up the motor, because there is a safety switch. So as I raise up, it'll hit that pin, stopping it. And with the Jeep out of the way, you can see I can still gain access to the things that I need to, including the doors of the Jeep, but you can still use your garage. As I said, I'm 6 foot and I can walk around here with no problems. I don't worry about hitting my head on it. So that's really nice, because otherwise, that's a big piece of real estate to have to find a spot for. So using a spot that normally is kind of unusable by raising it up is kind of twofold. It gains you space, it makes it easier to load, and you can still use your garage. Not a bad choice. Now this system is designed to work for ceilings that are going to be 9 foot minimum. So if you have anything shorter than that, unfortunately it's just not really going to raise it up enough to get this out of the way, but you can go up to 15 foot, so your applications are pretty wide there. Now also with applications, this is going to work for your JLs, your JKs, as well as your Gladiators, and your Unlimited. So if you have a hard top and a relatively new Jeep, this is going to work great for you. Now this real-life application is a 10-foot ceiling, and this Jeep has slightly larger tires. I think they're about a 33, nothing too crazy, but kind of standard that you see on a lot of Jeeps these days. And the main thing that when you're backing into place, you do want to make sure that the clearance over the third brake light is going to be that lowest point, because this is going to kind of slide over as long as you back it in place. But having 6 inches of lift over the Jeep's roll bar here is really nice, because you can go right under it. You don't have to worry about clipping the corners of it or anything like that. So again, this is kind of a 10-foot application, but if you have 9-foot ceilings, this is going to drop down lower than the roll bar potentially if you have larger tires. So you are going to have to back inside of it, which just something to keep in mind if that is your ceiling height. Also, kind of having a designated spot once you have your hardtop dialed in on the hoist is marking the spot on the floor. That way when you back in, you know exactly where you need to be, and that way you can guide that top onto it nice and easy. I'm really impressed with the kit in itself as far as the installation and how it works, but really a lot of it comes down to they've supplied you with a lot of the tools you need to get this done, and you could probably knock this out in about 2 hours. One person can do it. You're going to be on a ladder, so make sure you have one that's high enough to reach to your ceiling. Also, power tool wise, they do include a nice drill bit as well as a hole saw and a socket to get your lag bolts in and make some of those holes, but having a drill, and I highly recommend a 1/2-inch impact if you can, or a 1/2-inch large ratchet would definitely help. Those lag bolts can be a little bit tricky and you're going to have to fight them, so impact makes it a lot easier. But overall, pretty easy installation, and we're going to take a look at that now so you can get yours installed. Now, one of the first things we're going to want to do before actually doing any portion of the install is setting it up to make sure that we have an open place to put this and still have room for our top to go up. So checking to make sure for any obstructions, including your garage door opener or the tracks or the door itself even when it's open, as well as shelving around. And you're going to want a 3-foot by 4-foot spot, and that's going to allow room for this top to go up. You're also going to want to try to stay about 3 foot away from each wall just to make sure that you have that clearance. Now, something else to take in consideration is the power cord for the winch itself is going to be about 5 foot long, and you're going to want to find an outlet that you can reach. And normally on your garage door opener, you're going to have an outlet mounted up there with an open one. So we're going to try to use that, and that can also kind of determine how you mount it up. Because you need that power outlet, you kind of want to see if any of those different orientations in the instruction manual work best for you. And you're going to have 2 different options. It's going to be really based on your joists, if they run perpendicular or parallel. So you're going to want to figure that out either using a stud finder, or if it's kind of like this, you can actually see where it's been patched. You can see the way that they run, but you do want to double check just to make sure. And before we put hardware up, we're going to be checking for that. So we've gone ahead and chosen to do option D just because that gives us the clearance that we need for our power cable, and it also centers it up really nicely. So what I've done is also mark out on the floor where we have our Jeep parked right now. That way when we get it in place, we kind of have a reference mark to move it back and try to center it up. So I'm going to get the Jeep moved out and we'll start the installation. So next you're going to want to grab your mounting plate, and you'll see there's some studs that are on here. This is where the motor's going to mount up, and there's actually holes for 16-inch studs as well as 24. So depending on what you have, you'll use those accordingly. Now we have 16-inch, so we'll go ahead and make sure that you have those studs where the side that you want the motor based on the orientation that you've picked. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of mark these out. I'm using the nail pop that I see here that's been patched, so that gives you a pretty good indication that's a stud. But before I actually make any holes, I'll make sure to go back with my stud finder and give it a look. But I'm going to make some reference marks here, and then since we're 16-inch, I'm going to go ahead and mark these as well. Now I've made my marks, and I realized that one of my marks is actually going right exactly where a screw is, and that's obviously not going to work very well for the lag bolt. So I'm going to move it back a little bit, and also you're going to want to make sure this is nice and flush with the wall, but really not all walls are perfectly squared up. So you want to get it at least close enough to where it's even and not going to be crooked. So what I'm going to do is measure from our tape line back just to get our first reference, and then I can kind of line those, make our holes, and that's going to give me room to miss this screw as well. So just using our tape line here, I'm going to go right at about 10 inches, so I'll make my marks. Now it's easy to assume that we have these all on a stud, but these lag bolts are pretty long, and if you run them up and they just hit the corner of it and kind of poke out, structurally it's not going to do a great job of holding it up. You really want to hit the center of the joist so it has that bite, and it's really going to have that nice firm hold that you want while your top is suspended. So They suggest actually using the bit that comes in the kit, a little hole saw bit, and kind of drilling those out. And you can see the width of the joist. Just try to hit that center. You can also use a utility knife to cut these out. Generally, I've never really done that, but I get the point of trying to find that center. But really, a good option too is also using your stud finder. And that should get you pretty close. And so we are getting our stud right there as it aligns exactly where we drew it. So that's a good sign. But I'm gonna drill these out. Just make sure that we are hitting solid wood right where we're gonna put our lag bolts. So now that it doesn't poke through the drywall, I know that it's hit wood. I might kind of just enlarge this hole as an oval, and that way I can see the whole width of the joist and we can really get dead center on it. Now this is going to be covered by the plate, so if it does look like a large hole, it's not going to be unsightly because it should be covered. So I'm going to go ahead, enlarge these out, and then we can start getting ready to put our mounting plate up. So using our hole saw bit, it's kind of nice. You can actually go kind of the width of it, and it'll kind of cut out those sections of the drywall to see the whole width. So now we just need to take the drill bit that's included. It's 1/8 of an inch, and we're going to find the center point of our joist and just make a pilot hole. This is going to help us to get our lag bolts in, and just once they're kind of started in this pilot hole, it's going to be easier to zip them up and have a straight line. They're not going to go in crooked. So now you're going to want to grab 6 of your lag bolts, your mounting plate, as well as the socket that's included in the kit. And this is going to be a 1/2 inch drive, so you might need a 1/2 inch ratchet. I'm using a 1/2 inch impact to kind of drive them in. It is a 13 millimeter, so if you don't have a 1/2 inch, but you have a 13 millimeter socket, you can use that at home to get these mounted up. So again, make sure that the studs are exactly where you want the motor to be based on your orientation. And then I'm just going to kind of put one of these in to hold it in place, and then I can put one on the other side just to hold it up while we get the rest of the hardware up. And this one's slotted, so it's kind of nice. It allows you to adjust to make sure you're on that perfect center. So, but again, try to find that pilot hole. So I've gone ahead and I got my 2 corners just to kind of hold that up. And now that it's mocked up, I've measured just to make sure I'm still squared up. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of our lag bolts installed and nice and tight. So we want this cinched flush against the drywall. So now you're going to want to grab your motor as well as some flange nuts that come in the kit. And we're going to get this mounted up. And I think it makes it a little bit easier. Just get these hand threaded on. And that way you can slide the motor on. It's better than having to hold the motor in place and then tighten these on. So just leave a big gap there. And then you can see the tabs here. These are just going to slide on it. Now as far as orientation of the motor, it's going to be obviously important that you set it up. That arm is going to attach to this portion. So you want to make sure whichever orientation you're using that you're matching the motor accordingly. So I'll just raise this up in place. I might actually have to take this one off where this mounting bracket is, but the other ones line up, and we'll at least have 3 of them holding. So just kind of place this up, slide it over, and then we can tighten these down with a wrench or whatever, but what's kind of nice is the socket that comes with it in the kit is a 13, and these are a 13, so we can get these tightened up. Now with the motor mounted up, this is a good time to also check to make sure that your power cable does reach your plug, because if it doesn't, you're probably going to have to move it. But since we planned that out accordingly, we can go ahead and get this plugged in. So now at this point, you're going to want to grab this channel, and this is where our pulley arm is attached to kind of spread out the cables that are going to pull our top up. And you'll see this pin here. That's going to be nice to align this. And what we're going to be wanting to do, if you are running in a parallel orientation, you're going to want to find the exact points where we think we have the studs. Again, you'll want to check those before, maybe make some marks, and then we're going to just mark those, kind of drill them out like we did before and make sure we're in the center of the stud. And then what we're going to do is take a lag bolt, run it through before and after the pulley just for support. And again, make sure you're lined up in here. Now something else that we do have is a small nut, and that's going to thread on the bolt here just to hold that channel in place. So that's going to kind of keep it nice and upright as we put our lag bolts in. So I've gone ahead and plugged it in, and we have our key that's included. Go ahead and test this out, make sure that's working, and we're going to need to lower it to get our straps on anyway. So before I mount these up and get the wires all cleaned up, we can go ahead and give it a test run. So just kind of getting ourselves set up as well. One of your straps is going to be longer than the other, and that is going to be the one that runs out the arm to that pulley. So you can go ahead, drape that. The other one you're going to want in this mechanism, and the reason being is once this pulls up high enough, this will kick this sensor, and that way it can't be overlifted. Now running of the wires is going to be kind of dependent on the way that your garage is laid out, but again, try to make sure you have a nice clean path before mounting, and just using these plastic wire holders, you pretty much just snap it around the wire and then run your screws in. And if you can hit studs, awesome, that's going to hold it in really well, but there's also drywall anchors included, so you can use those as well. So make a nice clean path, whatever works best for you, and really it comes down to where you want to mount the module to raise and lower. As far as mounting up your module box, I used a drywall anchor behind here, the large screw-in ones, made it nice and easy, and then using the black screws in the kit, just mounted those into the drywall anchors, and now it's nice and secure. So now we need to just mount up our hooks on our strap. So I'm going to go ahead, lower this down, and get it in a position where we can attach those. We're going to first start with the strap that is running down in that loop there. It should be the shorter one, and what we're going to do is feed our stopper plate in. And as I mentioned earlier, we have that little bar, and as that pushes it up, it stops the motor. Well, this is going to make sure that it has a nice contact patch there. So we'll put our plate. We're then going to put our spring and just slide that in. And then grabbing your hook here and cotter pin as well as our pin here, we're going to go ahead and just put it in just the top hole for now. You can eventually adjust your height later on, but probably need to have the top attached to it before we do that. So we'll just put it in like that. So I've gone ahead and attached our back hook with our cotter pin, and it does not have our little block here, our stopper plate. And you're going to want to check and see if they're level or not. And we can tell that this one droops a little bit lower, so that's where this comes into play. We can actually adjust the height by just pulling this out and then pulling our strap down a little bit lower. So I'm going to kind of just play around with it until we get this perfectly level. So I've kind of just gone ahead and adjusted these, and you can take a tape measure and just measure from the bottom of the hook and go to the ground, and that should pretty much make it easy to let you know if it's level or not. So the next step we need to do is get our hooks in place on the Jeep top. So I'm going to raise this up, get it out of the way, get our Jeep in, and get those hooks mounted up. So as I go up, I'm going to test to make sure our stopper's working. And just like that, it stops it automatically, and that way it's not burning up the motor or causing damage to the straps. So we have our Jeep backed in place exactly where we want it, and we have all of our hardware taken off so the top is loose. So we need to get our hooks in place. And this is going to fit where our original Torx bits came out for the top to mount up. Now something I've realized though is when I lift this up and put it in place, we do have a little bit of a clearance issue. So we have our bumper sitting there, and I've taken off our hardware, and this stud is where the rest of our wing nut and washers need to go to bolt this in. So I've actually had to trim off quite a bit from our previous ones, and the bolt it's still encoded with that rubber pretty far down. So if you cut off about 1/4 of an inch, that should allow you to get enough threads to get this tightened up. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this one up, and then we'll get it reinstalled. Now you're going to want to double check your fitment on your Jeep. Potentially it could be different from trim to trim, but it doesn't seem like the threads here are that long. In the instructions it actually looks a little bit different than this, so maybe a changed design has caused some issue, but you might want to just take a look at yours, see how much you need to trim off. But again, you want to make sure you have enough for your washers and your wing nut to be able to tighten down, because this is really what's structurally holding this on to the hoist. So I went around it with the utility knife and made a nice clean cut here. So again, this is just going to give us that little bit of extra space for everything to slide on there before tightening it up. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to all my bumpers, and that way we have that clearance. So with that trim, now I can raise this up. And that rubber is going to be nice to protect the body of the Jeep as we slide this through. And this channel, the little back part of it should slide kind of right in this area. It might be hard to see, but once we tighten this up, should be a nice clean fit here. So we'll put our big washer, and then our little washer, and then our wing nut to finish it up. So this creates a solid mounting point for our hoist straps to be able to pull this up. So we'll go ahead and get one in each corner of the top and just get those all tightened down. So now you're going to want to grab your cam buckle straps here, and we're going to take our carabiner and loosen this up. And I'm going to put the end that's furthest away from the cam buckle. That way we can strap it from up top. So just go ahead and make this connection here. And then I'll just run this up to my hook. And I'm going to leave a little bit of extra slack here because I'm going to run this over to the other side as well. So I'll repeat this on that side, and then we'll go to the other side and attach to the hook there as well as this hook, and that's going to create our cradle. Now, before we raise it up and get some of the slack out, you're going to want to make sure that you have your electrical connections also taken apart. That way you're not pulling those as we go up with the lift. But now that I have both sides attached to the carabiners as well as the hooks, I can go ahead, bump it up, get some of that. I can tighten this up, get a little more slack, and then we can adjust it with the cam buckle straps to kind of get it evened out. So I'm just going to go ahead and get the slack out of those top straps, and we can start to see kind of where it's balanced out at. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull my cam buckles tighter, and that way we have a lot of clearance to be able to pull this up. Kind of even it out on both sides. Now once you get your cam buckles tightened down, you're going to want to slowly lift up, and it might be helpful to have an extra set of hands to kind of just balance it up as it goes for at least the first time until you get it fine-tuned. Now, we've gone ahead and moved the Jeep out, and we lowered this down to the ground to fine-tune our adjustments. And really, once you kind of get this set for that Jeep, it should be ready for the next time. And so the way we did that was brought both of our straps to the center, and we wanted both of our D-rings to kind of meet there, and tighten it down to where you just had enough slack to be able to hook onto here. Now, also make sure that your hooks are still level, but once you make that connection, that should keep it nice and tight as it pulls, and you might need to tighten it up more. Just kind of go up and down a few times, raise it up all the way, and see if you can gain a little bit more clearance. It's kind of up to you, but we're going to go ahead, raise this up, and see how it looks. Now, if you notice that it's leaning to one side or the other, this is a good time to adjust it. So I have it slightly elevated off the ground here, so I can kind of lift one side, pull a little extra tension, and then we can kind of iron out those inconsistencies. Now, it's not going to take a whole lot here. As you can tell, it's kind of relying on the whole balance of all of them. But overall, it's already pretty good. They're all pretty even. And the main thing is, to get more roof clearance, you really want these nice and tight. So now, let's go up and check our fit against the ceiling. Now with everything fine-tuned, we're ready to take our Jeep out without a top on it, and whenever we are ready to put it back in place, it's going to be simple to just back this up and being able to control that and just lightly guide it on. These rubber bumpers are going to be nice. It's not going to scratch the body. It's going to be nice and easy. You're not really even going to break a sweat trying to get this back on. So it's really nice. I'm 6 foot, and as you can tell, that's plenty of clearance here. I can still get the things on the shelf, and if you actually need to get more up there, you can always lower it down, and these bumpers also serve as a nice place to rest on the ground without scratching your top. And that was a look and installation of the Bestop HOSS Hardtop Jeep Hoist.